Hello and welcome or welcome back to talking about cross stitch with the Stitching Owl on March the 2nd of 2025. I hope that you are well, and to everybody who's been experiencing some flu, colds and other viruses, I hope that you are able to rest and recuperate and find your way back to health and stitching very soon. We tend to talk about the weather almost immediately these days, so I will say that it is a brisk day here in London, Ontario. We are technically at -7 with a wind chill taking it to -14. So I have to admit my husband wasn't as excited as he would like to be about going out for his run. There is an upcoming run in a close city called Hamilton, called Around the Bay. And my husband is always joking that if he signs up, it's guaranteed to be a cold March. He signed up. So I'm sure that he's apologizing to everybody else who's going with him, that they would have been better off had they not invited him along. Now, as we talk about temperatures, you know that I have been working on temperature stitching using the specialty stitch chart of the stitching mommy, Sarah. She has an Etsy site with actually quite a few different options for how to do temperature stitches. She's got butterflies, turtles, trees, paths of dogs, paths of cats, and I'm sure there's more there. And of course, there are many other designers who have also provided us with wonderful charts. Deanne of Stitching on the Rock is doing one by Climbing Goat Designs. And for hers, she is actually stitching the high and the low. What I am doing is checking out the temperature at noon hour each day, and that is the temperature that I'm doing. Now, I was really going along very, very well. There was no problem with the Queen Stitch in January, and indeed the Jessica Stitch in February has not been an issue. As a matter of fact, it's quite quick to stitch this. So I am caught up, so I'm going to show you where I am. So here's my Queen Stitch with January, and here is February. And if we look down here, we've got a day that's green because it got well above zero that day. My challenge is that once I got finished doing all of my Jessica stitches and was putting in my herringbone, I stopped and went, uh-oh. Can you see what I did? I haven't centered the actual Jessica stitches properly. I was supposed to have 3 threads here before I started and 3 threads here. Here I've got 1, here I've got 2, and therefore over here I've got 5, and here I've got 4. And yes, I'm caught up to the end of February, but I must admit that I'm debating just starting from scratch because I don't really want to pull this out. I'm not sure if there's any way I can actually manage to save a little bit of this to make a small, because this, yeah, I don't know. It was one of those moments where I absolutely groaned because I was delighted to be done. And I had done all of those Jessica stitches perfectly. And then I put in the border. So I know that many people, I think Sheila of Mrs. Stitches actually put in all of her border first. And that probably would have saved me. I'm not sure. Anyway, we will see whether I just go, oh well, and keep on going, or I start from scratch again and just stitch both January and February because it wouldn't take me that long to catch up, and I certainly have enough thread to do it. So that's my saga with my temperature stitch. I thought I was doing great. Happy Mail. Well, back in early December, I believe it was, it might have even been late November, a Flosstube and stitching shop called For the Stitcher's Soul reached its 100th video. And as is very common, they said, pop in such and such a word and you'll be in for a draw to celebrate number 100. And I won that draw. And then they very nicely held on to my prize until into January, when things were a little bit more stable when you were trying to mail from the United States to Canada, because there was a delay there where they didn't really want anybody making that decision. So they sent me a little bag, and in it I have an alphabet sampler palette, and in here it actually includes the teeny tiny palette, the pattern of course, as well as all of the floss. So this is a complete kit, absolutely darling. It is just so cute. With it came some stickers that say, cross stitch is love made visible. They included a pattern. Now, when I read the instructions for this delightful little Easter egg, it's really meant to be stitched like a Mill Hill kit on perforated paper. I don't know. I think I could do it on anything that I wanted. It is a very clear chart and is only 42 by 50, so it wouldn't take me that long to do. I had a card of Weeks Dye Works called Noel, and literally it's a variegated floss. I'm just going to put it next to my white arm. And you can see it has gold, green, and red in it. And then the last thing, I must admit that I looked at this and I was like, and what did they send me? So it's actually got very strong, well, seriously, I could get it, there we are. It is a very fancy way of carrying around your needles. And it's actually quite heavy and firm. It feels like it's pewter, actually. So you wouldn't actually risk, especially with how stiff this is to get that top off, you wouldn't risk losing your needles, and they wouldn't be bent in transit. So I'm just going to hold that up here. Isn't that pretty? So I was indeed blessed with this Happy Mail, and I actually had it before my last video, and I forgot to bring it down because, as my title said the last time, it was a video that was just a little bit scattered. Now, in Happy Email, I have been contacted by an Etsy shop and asked if I would be open to stitching one of their patterns and showing it to you. And I said, well, actually, I'm quite happy to do that for people. I don't mind actually purchasing it, but they said they wanted to give me the first pattern. So the shop is called Mama Piggy X Stitch. Now, Etsy being what Etsy is, sometimes when you put in the title of a shop, you get, as I did, 25 pictures of pigs for cross-stitching instead of the correct spot. So I'm going to put a link into my description box so that you can see the one that I have picked. I'll also show a picture of it. And then you can just look around their shop, because there's about 300 different stitches for us to look at, and they are lovely. So I hope that some of you will give them a little peek, and the next time we're together, I will have something at least started to show you. Canada Swaps 2. Photos are coming in regularly, and smalls are being mailed and received. Thank you for either originally or in answer to my request providing the name of the pattern and the designer for each of your stitches. So far, 14 have been completed and shipped with notice to me. So that's almost half of the smalls. So the final date for sending your Canada Swaps 2 is coming. It's March the 10th. You still have a week to finish and fully finish. I am just absolutely thrilled that so many of you were ahead of time, and I had a couple of them 2 and 3 weeks ago. Now, here's the thing. I showed great restraint. On, I believe it was Tuesday, I had a knock at my door, and this box arrived. And when I looked at the name of the sender, I went, oh, hang on, because I wasn't sure who would be sending me this box, but I recognized the name because I am the organizer of Canada Swaps. I knew who would be sending to me, and as is normal, when somebody gets my name, they don't send me a picture and all of the details because they want me to be surprised. So it's okay. So Heather, I will take that picture for this, and I'm just gonna, I started to pull this apart, and then I saved it. I know, 5 days, so here we go. I contacted Heather and said, can I do the unboxing on my Flosstube? And she said, okay. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not gonna let me in. I should have cut this more firmly open. Wow, what can I chat about while I wrestle with the box? Ha! There we go. Okay. So you are seeing my reaction to this. So the first thing that I have, I'm going to show you. This looks like more than one small. So I've got a beautiful card, and if I turn it over, I've got packages with, it looks like what I do if I've got the edge of a fat quarter and it's just a little bit, I will save it and use it as a ribbon. So the first thing I open, oh my goodness, look at all of this floss. And I am good to go for making a forest with many different kinds of trees. Wow. Now, what kind are they? Heather, they're Cosmo. I have always wanted to find out what Cosmo was like to stitch with. How did you, I can't remember if I mentioned it. Thank you. Okay, so second one. So please remember that you really only had to send the small. So Heather, I'm feeling just a little bit overwhelmed right now and definitely spoiled. So when I open the next one, okay, so I've got this, and hang on. Oh, I got it. So what she's done is she has made me, out of a batik, a Kleenex holder to pop into my purse, which actually is a really excellent idea because right now there are colds and things going around. Okay, now the third one is a different shape. Like, I'm just amazed that you got sent all of this. What? I didn't hear anything break. So let's okay. So I've never heard of this, but it will be used. So this is called Shooter Spice. It is from the Big Dog Hunting Supplies out of Taber, Alberta. I love that you picked something that was truly Canadian. And like, my husband loves to barbecue and things. So I'm thinking that that's what this is supposed to be used for. Wow, thank you so much. And last but not least, well, actually, before I do the last but not least, I'm going to open the card and show you the card she sent me. I feel like this is Christmas. And I'm sorry for the crinkles. I really should have opened more. She handmade the card, and look at that. She stitched a maple leaf. How perfect. How perfect. Oh my. So she's explaining a little bit about herself and what each of these elements are. I'm not going to read this all at this point, but Heather, thank you for providing that information, because it is absolutely wonderful. Your husband owns an archery shop? Not many people can say that. Okay, and I've got the last one, which, okay, this one had a stronger knot. Okay, and this has bubble pack. I bet you're a very thorough wrapper at Christmas as well. Oh, thank you. Look at this. Isn't that delightful? Now, hang on. Let me just see if I can figure out on here. Somewhere here I know it'll say what this is. Ah, this is a chart from Darlene Dion. You know she's one of my Canadian faves. So this is Darlene Dion chart, and you can find her charts on Etsy just by putting in her name. They usually come up quite nicely. And thank you so much for giving me a little hint of spring on a day where, yes, we are getting more snow. So, wow, thank you so much. That unboxing was wonderful for me. Wow. Okay, I need to collect myself. Canada Chats update. We had a Canada Chats yesterday, and we had almost a dozen lovely ladies. We played a bingo game that said swap 2, and it took quite a while, but because I filled it all in with embroidery elements like Canadian Flosstubers, the names of Evertote Roxy Floss, fabrics, flosses, so, and designers, of course. So it was one of those things that we had a fabulous time, and I have to say thank you to Evertote for providing a prize. So I will be tomorrow during business hours contacting Evertote so that they know who to send a gift certificate to. And congratulations, Michelle. Whether it was a row or the full card, you actually won both ways, so very good. And I'm already thinking about the game to include in next time. Now, one of the things that I did say is that the next time, the first Saturday in April, I am actually teaching at our needlework shop, so we're going to be moving it to the Sunday. I will put up a Canada Chats video short to alert everybody about that one. Okay, now let's get talking about some stitching. So a short summary of February. February was a good stitchy month for me, even though it had fewer days in it. I started the month with 15 works in progress, and by the end of the month I had 24 on my list, of which I had stitched on 21 of them. So that's not too shabby. Now I just have to make sure I get those other 3 in this month. So I am actually starting March with 19 whips because I finished or fully finished some of those. And this is actually the highest count for starting a month, but it's interesting that I'm okay with it. There would have been a time that I wouldn't have been, but I am okay with it. The thing is, I do have plans. So I am going to be starting Doreen Jones Butterfly. It's a mini full coverage. I'll show you a picture of it. And I had been planning to begin this in March with Laura of Stitching by the Shore. But then our little stitchy group was online and, well, friend Karen said, oh, that looks lovely. I'll get it. And Mary was like, oh, that looks doable. I'll get it. And we're still going. So Amy, do you think you can join us too? So we're going to be starting that on March the 20th. I do invite you to visit Doreen Jones' shop on Etsy. She has many lovely offerings. And it just happens that we are choosing butterflies because we're looking forward to spring. Now, so Mary is, of course, Mary of Mary's Stitch Corner, and Amy is of Renewing Stitches. I also have a feeling that tomorrow I will be purchasing Cabin in the Woods by Flossability, so that I can start that one with Mary as well. So just because I'm starting with 19 doesn't mean I'm sticking with 19, but we'll have to see if I can manage to finish something as well. Okay, Whip Go progress. So I am stitching beside Amy, Renewing Stitches, and Sarah, the Rocking Chair Stitcher, to work on 25 ornaments in 2025. And for me, a Whip Go is really a start go because every one of the boxes, and I don't have a free one, I've got a 25th in there, they're all new starts for me. So I just have to make sure that I'm planning those sizes so that I can actually dig into them. Now, to be a little bit kind to myself, I just need to get a good start on these. I would love it if I could finish the stitch. And my goal is to fully finish as many of the ornaments as possible. But in a year where there may be more trips out of town for family reasons, I felt that I needed to just say, I'm going to give each one a good start. So on my last Flosstube, you saw draw number 1 of February where I stitched Mouse's Lucky Day of Tiny Modernist. My second one said Shannon Christine. So I had this in my stash and I thought that's perfect. That means I can stitch it ahead of St. Patrick's Day. So one of the things that I'm discovering is that Shannon Christine might have smalls galore for us, but she shades everything. So there's still quite a few colors and changes in one thing and another. So I did not get this finished, but I would say I got a good start. So you can see I've got my tablecloth, the pot of gold, got my flowers, and I've got my, I don't know, is it a cup of green beer? The gnome is started. He needs his nose and his hat, and there needs to be more 4-leaf clover. Now, I will bet that all of you could guess that this is vintage country mocha even weave. This is 32 count. Literally, I had a piece that was cut off around something else that I had done. And so what I am doing now is going through and seeing if I can find 3 or 4 ornaments to use up this last little channel of fabric because I don't want to waste it. So I predict that I will have this finished by next time, but I'm not going to guarantee it because yes, indeed, we have had the March numbers pulled, and I was delighted to discover that one of mine, I forgot to bring down my Whipco board. Oh well, you'll see it next time. My first call was Darling and Whimsy. So I am going to stitch a Quirky Quaker, and those generally go relatively quickly for me, so I'm hoping it's well on the way by the time we're together. And then my other pull was another Etsy store, so I substituted in my Mama Piggy X Stitch new pattern because if I stitch it on 40 count, it is the perfect size for an ornament. So I'm just exchanging a couple of Etsy shops so that I can do everything. And if I get a chance to come back and grab something from Velvet Pony, I certainly will. And for the magazine monthly cross stitch challenge, the theme is crystal. So it's the next time I finish an ornament and put on my clear beads, that will be crystal because they end up looking like crystals. The acrostic is the word sparkle. So throughout my chat, you're going to hear me talking about, and this is the letter such and such. For the I Spy challenge, that is Laura Stitching by the Shore. She's on Flosstube and she is has a Facebook group. I've got quite a few of those already stitching, but I must admit that I am slightly, I don't know whether the word is confused or I'm slightly uncertain as to what I'm going to do for the prompt that is something to do with Dr. Seuss. So if you have some ideas, that would be very, very helpful to me. I know that I can do like a tiny Christmas tree ornament because Cindy Lou Who in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas certainly had a Christmas tree that she was in front of at one point. But if you have any other ideas, I am most open to them. Okay, fully finished items. And I didn't bring them all down, but okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is say that last month I showed you that I had stitched one of the ornaments out of Love Wishes by Robin Pickens. And what I'm going to do is to show you that I've fully finished and almost fully finished 3 that are basically identical. So at this point, I'm going to invite you to keep an eye out for a Flosstube Extra where I explain why I did 3 of the same ornament. So this was a lovely and quick stitch. They didn't get fully finished for Valentine's Day, but you know, love never goes out of season, so I think these can be up any time of the year. Another fully finish. Okay. For the people who say, I don't know how to finish anything. I don't sew. I am uncomfortable with a glue gun. I experimented. So this is a Cute Patterns by Maria. There's a witches sampler where there's a bunch of different witchy things on it. And what I did for my daughter is I just took each element out because they were each a good size and gave them to her to stitch individually. So this is the hand with the ivy vine. And what you'll see here is I purchased a styrofoam block. And then I wrapped this like it was a gift. So I wrapped around the Aida cloth. I stitched this on 14 count Aida. This is a specialty dyed by Pole Stitches. And then I took a fat quarter and cut that up. And so this is 99% finished. Because what you can see is that I've got pins here to put it in place. And on the bottom, I have used hat pins. You can use corsage pins, just happen to be out of them. And I'm using that as feet for it to stand up. What my plan is to come around here, now that I've got it this far, with rickrack, and then use further hat pins to make it look like I've got beads around the outside, but actually it's instead of sewing or gluing. You can do this. So if you aren't sure about finishing, styrofoam blocks can be bought at a craft store, and certainly you can get different sizes of them at Amazon as well. And now I'm going to put in a little video of my other finishes and fully finished items that were previously forgotten. I did an experiment, and there are things about this prototype that I will definitely change before I do this again. But what I did here was I made a project bag. This is one of my grandmother's doilies. This is English paper piecing called Grandmother's Garden. They're these little hexagons that you stitch together by hand. What I did was I appliqued this onto this yellow, and I blanket stitched this onto the hole, and then I also beaded through different little spots here so that this wasn't quite as loose in the center. Now this is definitely oversized, so there is, yeah, we can hold a lot of stuff in here. It's not quite square. I'm not sure whether it was my paper piecing that put it off, or I don't know. So it's not perfect, but I do now know that I can blanket stitch my grandmother's doilies onto project bags. That's amazing because I've got a lot of them, and I think it's just a fun way to keep using something that we had everywhere in our house. On the arms of chairs, the backs of chairs, couches, under every plant there was a doily. We had doilies everywhere. Middle of the table. Yeah, we used them as hot pads. I also, while I was making project bags, I'm starting ahead on things that I will be giving away at Stitch North. So in doing a little bit of organizing, I found some leftover pieces from a panel where I had already used the large piece to make something for my sister. So what I did was I took and made, like, these are Christmas bags. There's a cardinal. Blue jays. And chickadees. So that actually had me thinking, wow, I need to look through my stash of fabric and see if there's more panels for me to play with so that I can make some pretty cool and singular project bags, because I tend to make a project bag and then not make it exactly the same ever again, and I do that on purpose. When I give these away, it is one of a kind. Back to the regular video. And I'm back. I always forget to bring something down when my hands are full. Okay, finished objects. Not a lot got just plain finished. I've got a number of things close again. So I'm just going to put this on this book. So this is the month June from the Patchwork calendar by Alla Embroidery. This was my New Year's Eve 12 by 12 project. I went on the video with Stitchin with Sandy, who had all day of New Year's Eve stitch with me, and on each hour she'd alert us to change. Well, I had 12 of these months, and I got all of them started, though I didn't manage to be with her for 12 hours. I actually finally just went to sleep. So this is June. And do I have any other information? So Patchwork is the P in Sparkle for the Magazine Monthly Challenge. And because this is out of a calendar where you have a different small for each month, I'm saying that this is a way of marking time for that prompt for the I Spy. Now I'm stitching these on a 25 count, I believe it's a Lugana, 1/1 full cross, and that's how I'm getting them this small. And each month I'm using a different variegated floss. So that is 2 of these done. Interestingly enough, I did July and January and June and February. When I go on to works in progress, I'm going to say that out came the Patchwork calendar again, and this time I'm doing March in March. So this is the March small. Now, when you see these pictures, they are using the Alla Embroidery floss, and this floss does a tan and brown through to green. I didn't quite have that combination, and at this point I'm not sending out of country for floss. Now I'm going to tell you that this particular pattern is interesting because they tell you that each one of them, and of course I took off my glasses, this one has 2,068 cross stitches in it. So it's interesting that that doesn't look that complicated, but it does have over 2,000 stitches. And then I'm just going to remind you that I'm very grateful to Samantha, the Hugo Stitcher, for sending me this pattern. I was absolutely delighted when she did that. Now, how far have I gotten this? Well, at this point, I have a green cross, it looks like. So there is still some more to go under here and in here, and then the border all the way around, of course. And on this one, I am using Weeks Dye Works Lucky. So you can see that I'm going amongst many different flosses in order to just get the colors that I want. I'm just shopping my own stash. So I am very happy with that, and I do stitch this always on Monday for Monochromatic Monday. Laura Stitching by the Shore, and Beth the Steadfast Stitcher, and apparently Nancy the Disorderly Stitcher are all doing Monochromatic Monday, and I have joined in that fun. Now, other days I will often put in a single strand just so that I keep on making progress, because I do want to have all 12 of them done before the end of the year. Okay, now my next one on here, then I have to look and see in my pile. So we have Irises by Owl Forest Embroidery. Now I admit I almost just dug in and completely finished this, but I decided I wanted one more 2-week period with this particular stitch. It will help me to get through to the time change where we look forward to spring, and it continues my memories of my childhood home. I am using DMC, 2 threads on a 32 count even weave. And let me see, I have 4,071 stitches here, which means that I've got 91% done. And then I am also using this, when we look at this, one of the prompts in Laura's list is something that is gold or goldish, and you can see that there are motifs, and this particular border around the center motif that are gold, so I am using my irises for something gold. I imagine I could actually, well, I finished the one, no, I could have used the pot of gold on my Shannon Christine, couldn't I? That probably would have been a little bit better, but anyway, I've got gold covered. My next one is called Little Owl's Night Out, and this is a start. So the question is, have you heard of it? If you are a watcher of the Flosstube Jen's Fiber Web, then you would have discovered that she showed it in her last video, and that it was her own design, and that she provided it free through a link in that video. So I popped on and said, I'll stitch that too, because she was asking for people to stitch it, and if it was Flosstubers, it would be lovely to see it on their Flosstube. So I do not have it done yet, but you can see this is the little owl. There are really only 4 colors in this, and a crew, a brown, a green, and a blue. This doesn't look quite right yet. It's an upside down possum in the making. He's not finished. There will be a moon and some birds and some flowers. Now, here goes. One of the prompts on Laura's list is something in the shape of a pie. So I need you to imagine that you've just bought a large size pizza and put it in the middle of the table, and you are feeding 8 hungry teenagers because your kids have their friends over. They all reach in to grab a piece of pizza at the same time, and they pull out, is that not what that looks like? Is what the pieces of pizza, and pizza is a pie, and then there's a couple of little random toppings that fell off. So I'm using this for the shape of a pie because I think pizza is a pie. Mind you, most pies aren't blue, but it could have been a blueberry pie. Now, was there anything else here? So for DMC, Little Owl is also the L in Sparkle. So that's nice. And I will say that this is a fabulous sanity stitch. Because there's only 4 colors and her chart is so clear, you can stitch while on a Zoom meeting with other people and be just fine. I haven't had to pull anything out. And I'm doing this on a 36 count even weave, hand dyed by Rolanda. Truly excited because Evertote just released the Avengers for the 2 weekends, and my weekend hand dyed by Rolanda will be back, so I get to pick up more fabric. And I use 1 strand of DMC on this, and the coverage is fine. And next we have True North. This is a chart by the Rocking Chair Stitcher. I'm using one strand of CXC thread because it's a little bit thicker than DMC. I can do that on a 32 count Azure even weave. Now last time I had NOR, I've got olive north in and a good chunk of my maple leaf. I just want to say thank you, Sarah, because she actually gifted me this pattern. I have 1,130 stitches done, and that makes this 33.3% complete, so 1/3 done. So I need to put the red stripes on these sides once I've just finished a little bit here, and then there's some wording. So this, again, this is another stitch that I say works well when you are doing online meetings, or if you're meeting up in person at your library. There's essentially two colors there, a little bit of a third color for the flagpole, but it's just a very little bit. And clearly I got a lot of stitching done. Hang on. Did I put that in here? I know I brought it down. I'm looking for my planner. Okay, so I have the Cross Stitchers Planner. It's by Lori Sykes of My Crazy Life. And this is what my February looked like. I do not have room for stickers on my days of stitching because I am actually listing off what I stitched on that day and how many stitches it was, and then this list on this side is always telling me which ones are stitched on during that month, and I put a check mark if I finish them. Then I know not to list them the next month. So what I do is I actually total my weekly total, and then I find out that in February I stitched 36,510 stitches. Now please remember, I am retired. I have a supportive husband who doesn't mind my stitching my day away. And there are times where, for health reasons, it's best for me to sit still. And I get bored quickly, so the best way for me to sit still is to stitch. So I consider it stitching is medicine without side effects, or only good side effects. So I have been using that planner very happily. Now the next stitch that I'm going to tell you about is Barred Owl by Mudpuppy Designs. And I realized that last time I forgot to show you what it will look like. And Mudpuppy Stitchery is a Flosstube where Kenzie cheerfully chats about her stitching and then also gives us nature moments so that we learn more about things that she knows a great deal about. So with my Barred Owl, and again I say thank you, Kenzie, because she gifted me this pattern, I have done 8,890 stitches, which is 61% complete. And I thought last time that I'd get to the head. No, I did not. There was a lot of stitches in these feathers as we kept going across. But you can actually see, again, that barred owl, there's bars in the feathers. Now when I get this one, and then it goes up to the head there. I have one more little box here, a bit of the border, and then some sundries over here. So I'm well on the way. This was my New Year's Day new start stitch. So I've been doing this for 2 months. So I'm averaging about 4,400 stitches a month. I don't think I will get it done in March, but I could get it done in April. I am thoroughly enjoying this stitch. Now, is there anything else hidden on here? Nope, okay. So that is done. And then I realized that I'm gonna have to insert a video here about my Cottage Garden sampling stitches. So one of the things that I do when I have patterns that I find hard for me to read, especially if I'm ever stitching in the middle of the night, and you know I do that, I use PC Stitch, and if you've got an Apple product, it's also available as Mac Stitch, to do a point and click the pattern, and then I print it to Foxit PDF, and when I do that, it goes right into Pattern Keeper, so it becomes much faster to stitch. So I realize some of you are thinking, you take that time? I do take the time initially, but then I save the time later, and I enjoy the stitch. And generally, it's not foolproof, but generally I make fewer errors. So the last time we were together, I was telling you about starting the Raccoon. This is a Cottage Garden sampling. It's A Year in the Woods, and I believe it's number 4. And that I started this with Alyssa Jones. I'll have to contact her and see if we can have a March stitch together. So, I have to find this in my notes. Goodness gracious. Yeah, here we are. Here's my Raccoon. You can see I've got a very good start on his tail. So right at the moment, my Raccoon is being stitched with 1 strand of DMC on 36 count even weave, hand dyed by Rolanda again. You knew I was going to be. And I've got 1,634 stitches in for 22.39%, and Raccoon is the R in Sparkle. So I have a few more stitches to go in here, and then I go up to do more Raccoon, and there's more flowers. This is not a hard stitch, especially with Pattern Keeper. And then I said that I would be, between the last time and this time, starting the bear. Now, what I discovered with the bear is that while there are swirls in his fur coat, there isn't as much intricate patterning as there are in the other animals with regard, like the tail was in the Raccoon. So it's much more block stitching. So I have a feeling that the bear is going to go fairly quickly. Now, I've only stitched on it twice. And this is where you have to go, which way is up? So this is where I've got so far. This is the roof. Okay, hang on. You can see the roof of the house, some swirls of vegetation, and then this is part of the bear. It's just hard to figure out which part of the bear it is. It's a paw. So for just having a couple of stitchy sessions, the bear, it's on the same 36 count as my Raccoon is. And it appears that I did not type in here how many stitches I've got so far. I will have that for you next time. However, I have in here So M. One of the prompts from Laura for I Spy was starts with the, oh, I know what it was. Starts with the first initial of your middle name. So Laura, I'm curious. I had a childhood best friend who was one of 12 kids, and they did not get middle names. So I wonder what she would have done. My middle name starts with an M, as in Marie. So I was like, an M. How could I possibly have 19 projects and no M's? And then I thought, aha, Laura has said I can be creative. So with this, I manually, which starts with an M, put each stitch into my PC Stitch so that I would have it available to me in my pattern keeper. So M is for manually. I know. Somebody's groaning out there, I'm sure. But I have fun with this, don't I? And we're back for Cat at the Window Stocking by Cross Stitch Kits Alla. Now, it will be linked below. Right now, there is a 50% off sale for the month of March. And I will say that the pattern for my stocking is less than $5 right now. There are a lot of stocking options, a lot of nature options. It's worth a look. So at this point, I'm going to say, Mary, since you sent me to Etsy and got me thinking about making more purchases, maybe you'll look there too. Now, my cat at the window, so far I haven't started the cat part. I have 2,807 stitches for 11.84. So you'll see last time I was to about here. So I got farther across. This is a 20 count ecru Ada. I'm using one strand of DMC. Right here there'll be like a moon, and I think you can see the shape of the ear for the cat coming in. So there are over 23,000 stitches in this full coverage stocking. And I've come to realize that, quite honestly, I think almost every stocking is going to have about that amount of stitches if it's full coverage. Therefore, I can't wait to get going. I need to average about 2,000 stitches a month. So clearly, I've got January stitching done and a start on February. But I need to continue to do at least 2 strands a day until I catch up. Otherwise, I won't have this done in time to fully finish it for my daughter-in-law. So the pattern went with ease into Pattern Keeper directly from that Etsy seller, in case you're curious. And okay, I'm not using this one for any of the prompts, but I am going to tell you that I'm trying to stitch this with Sarah of Sarah's Stitchy Spot, who's got another stocking to do this year, and hope that at least a couple times this year we're able to stitch online together on our stockings. I am going to backtrack just a little bit to Barred Owl because I forgot to say that A. So owls fly in the air. Air starts with an A. Therefore, that's the A in Sparkle, as well as something that starts with A for Laura's prompt. So that was going back to the Barred Owl. So sorry for the jumping around. Strawberry Gnome by Neni Designs on Etsy. I'm using one strand of DMC on a 36 count even weave, again hand dyed by Rolanda. This was started as like, I think it was the very last call for Baringo, something in fantasy or something like that. I figured a gnome was a fantasy item. Baringo is, of course, the brainchild of Stitches and Bird's Eye Stitcher. And right now, okay, you can see that I've got the hat done. It's got all the little seeds of the strawberries. I've got to start on the basket of strawberries and to start on the gnome's beard. So at the present time, I have 3,483 stitches, which is 71.62%. And I am going to say that strawberry is the S in sparkle. And also, we're just going to notice that there are 6 leaves here and then some more leaves down here. One of the prompts for Laura was something that had a motif that had at least 4 repeats. There are more than 4 leaves here, so I'm going to use it for the repeats. So this is an easy stitch. I'm using 1 strand, and in this particular case, I am not minding doing the white stitching at all. Now in person, there is more than 1 color of white in here, and there are nuances that give texture to the beard that I'm thinking you are not seeing right now. And yet again, I'm going to insert another video right here. And my final insertion of a video. This past Thursday, I had the pleasure of stitching online with friends. I do hope, Connie, that you're feeling better. We will stitch together again soon. So Connie, Mary, and I decided we were going to start Fox and Butterflies, which is a pigeon coop design out of the In the Forest book. And yes, yet again, I just found it easier to put that pattern into PC Stitch and into Pattern Keeper. It's just easier for me to stitch it. Yes, you're right that I can now ask Max Pigeon for the Pattern Keeper compatible, but I already had it done, so there you go. Okay, so on here, so there are only 2,300 stitches in this pattern. So even though I just started it, I've completed 550 stitches. So the very center is these trees. Mary and I both were like, where'd you start? The trees. And then when I initially took out the colors for the fox, I went, wow, that's pretty orange. But it's working, so I'm just going to stick with those oranges. There might be some people that would do a more chestnutty brown than orange, but I'm going to stick with what was called for. So my 550 stitches is already 23.91% done. So in that session and a little bit of another session, I got it almost 1/4 of the way done. So again, this is a hand dyed by Rolanda 36 count even weave. And for the I Spy prompt, I'm saying that this one is spring-like because the foxes come out of hibernation in spring, the butterflies come out of cocoons, and therefore spring. And she said spring-like. It didn't have to be spring-specific. I don't tend to do things where you actually write those words right on it. There you go. I think I've said it all now. I'm now beginning to wonder how long this video is going to be by the time I insert all of these things. Okay, and next we go on to Quaker flag. I'm doing, of course, the Canadian version. Now, I shouldn't say of course, because Sheila of Mrs. Stitches has alerted us that there are provincial flags that Vivsters has done. She hasn't done quite all of them, but there are provincial flags. So there are options. Now, this is where I am. So I got all of this one finished. I finished this one and I started this one. So if I just hold that out, oops, there we go. I have it wrapped around funny. You can see that the tip right here is going to have that tip of the flag, so of the maple leaf. So I'm going to finish this, do this diagonal, and then work down this way. And in this way I don't have just all the grays all at once. So what are we at? Oh, actually, this was cause for celebration, and I actually think I'm going to post a picture of this. I don't post a lot of works in progress on my Instagram. I usually wait until there's a significant goal reached or something completed. And I'm trying to get myself back together. There we are. I reached 50% on my flag. And as such, I think it's worthy of putting this picture up on Instagram to say, Yahoo, 50%. I am stitching this with one strand of sulky 12-weight thread on 36 opalescent linen. The lack of evenness of this particular linen has slowed me down. I do believe that the Quakers would go faster had I chosen an even weave or an Aida, but I am 50% done. I'm not starting again. We're just going to keep on going. And then the last project that I'm going to show you, oh, before I leave the flag, prompt of Laura. So it said something on a parade float. In Canada, we do have in some cities the Canada Day parade, and on the floats they do tend to wave the Canadian flags. So I'm saying I got my parade float done with my flag stitch. And now my last one is By the Shore, artwork by Kaplan Dorr, and charted art by Stitches So Beautiful on Etsy. Believe it or not, I have actually posted a picture of my progress every weekend in February. I think last week it was like in the middle of the night into the morning of Monday, but I still got it up. So it's very unusual for me to actually go onto Facebook every single week. It just isn't part of my habits. I enjoy looking at everything when I go on there. I just don't tend to do it on a regular basis. So where am I here? I got to 55,286 stitches, which is 33.51%. Yes, I'm 1/3 finished. Look at that. And what you'll notice is that this is almost completely solid. I've got the body of a dog started here. This tree was very hit and miss the last time. You can see between the leaves, and now it is mostly solid. So in here, in February, I stitched 14,155 stitches on this particular pattern. I'm so excited by this. So I still am on track for a finish in October. So what I'm trying to do now is to just sort of go, okay, can I fill in to here and then continue on from there? I know that I took some of the I think it's sand on the side of the lake, out a little bit because it was on my thread. But I'm one of these people with my full coverages. I purposely do not do a page where you will have a ridge where you've stopped at the pages. And I've even seen some people say that when they do diagonal, they get diagonal ridges. I'm constantly trying to finish off my thread going into the next area so that those ridges don't happen. In Sparkle, this is E for Etsy because I purchased this pattern on Etsy, and I have more Stitches So Beautiful patterns. It was a good thing I didn't know there was a sale on Valentine's Day because I don't need more patterns from there. I often don't do the future fun, in part because my videos are long enough without it, but I thought that I would show you a book I had purchased. It's called Happy Days, and it is by Kyoko Maruka. So this is quite a thick book, at a very reasonable price. Yes, I purchased it on Amazon. Charlie Feathers had a Flosstube extra where she showed 4 books that she had purchased. She did a look through the way Amy does in the older magazines that she's got purchased. And as it happened, I had already purchased this one, and I already had the Tiny Modernist book. And now, of course, I'm going, one of them was, I'm going to have to go look at that video again to refresh my memory as to what the other 2 books were, because one of them was the name was there and then it was gone. This owl is not always wise. But I'm just going to do this to show you there's quite the project gallery. And that specifically, there's all these florals that are just smalls in case you need a small because you're making a card or a little pillow for a swap. There's lots of swap items in here. And of course, hang on, let's see if I can find swans. I really like that. And I happen to have a round tin that I'd like to see if I can figure out what size would be the best to do it so it would fit on that tin. So I think that there's actually quite a few stitches in here to be done. I'm looking forward to it. For shout outs today, my first one is for Dances with Floss. So they have about 6 videos, and it's 2 best friends who take a dance class together and they cross stitch together. They just chat quite informally back and forth. They have such a good sense of humor that it's so lighthearted and lovely. They have a wide variety of projects that range from something quite small to a full coverage has been started. So there's something in there for everyone. So that is Dances with Floss. And of course, everybody that I mention, I will put in the description box below. And my other shout out is for Green Goddess Plants, Seeds, and Stitching. Now, she has about 20 videos up. And if you can guess from the title, where it includes plants and seeds, she does have some farmland. She is in the Saskatoon area of Canada, and she does like to share with us her experience with working on the land and being part of markets to sell their food. I'm fascinated by not just the stitching in her case, and I know that my friend Karen has found her very enjoyable as well. And she's a person who does have food that she grows in season, but she stitches anything out of season. My moment for music today is a little bit different than normal. A while back, Trudy had asked me if I could find a rendition of How Great Thou Art. And even though my sister and I have thousands of dollars of music, neither of us had How Great Thou Art. It was a little unusual. So what I've done here is I have started and ended with a version of Holy, Holy, Holy that was arranged by Melody Bobber. And then when I get to the middle section, I improvise on How Great Thou Art. I'll be the first to tell you that when I'm improvising, sometimes a note here or there isn't quite what I would have done had I written it out, but it was my choice not to write it out. It was just to stop reading the music and just play. So I hope you enjoy this version of Holy, Holy, Holy with a moment in the middle for How Great Thou Art. And here we go. We are at the end of another video. March has upon us. By the time I see you again, those of us who change our clocks will have changed our clocks. Many Canadians will be at the end of their March break. And I know that some of you in the States will be talking about temperatures in the 70s and 80s, though that won't be where my temperatures are. Time is going quickly, and I know your time is valuable, so I thank you for finding a moment to be with me. Thanks also to all of those who have pressed subscribe and pressed the like button. It does help my channel immensely, and I really do love your comments. They make my day. It really is amazing what you share with me and how supported I feel by each of you. So thank you. And I hope that today, with floss, needle, and fabric in hand, that as you made something beautiful, you made yourself happy. God bless. See you in a couple weeks.